But I actually think this is a really exciting panel because when you've got the private sector, the public sector, the indigenous corporate sector, you've got people that are thinking about the policy making and how we share that policy making information with others. It's a really nice mix. And so with that, I'm going to start with the guy who lost the battle, but we know he's going to win the war, Mr. Thayer.
I guess a couple first thing, and that is the Alaska Energy Authority, investing in Alaska's future. You know, we are a state corporation. We have an independent board of directors appointed by the governor, and thanks to the legislature, Senator Giesel, Senator Stedman, we have a very independent board that is very specific into energy issues, which we have not had literally for the last 30 years, even though we've been in existence for 50 years. A little bit about AEA, and that is we have what we call owned assets. AEA owns Bradley Lake Hydro, which is the largest hydro project in the state of Alaska. It supplies 10% of the power to the rail belt, which is 75% of the state at 4 cents a kilowatt. Now, when you compare that, natural gas is $7, $8 a kilowatt. And if you were to look out at the wind farm on Fire Island, that's 9.6 cents a kilowatt. So Bradley is saying 4 cents. We've just paid off the bonds just a few years ago. And so with that, and it's a 50 to 100-year project. And so we have that guaranteed in there. But with that also comes transmission lines. And that's been a big push for AEA and the utilities is improving these transmission lines. These transmission lines are 50, 60 years old. And with that, we don't have any redundancy. And several years ago down in Kenai, we had the Swan Lake Fire. The Swan Lake Fire took out the line for 4 months. It cost the northern utilities $12 million in natural gas extra because we didn't have the 4-cent power. And so it really forced us to look at what we needed to do. AEA stepped in with the utilities. We actually purchased that line. We're upgrading that line. Same thing with, we also are looking at other upgrades to those lines. And we also have power cost equalization program. And where the state has invested in assets on the rail belt, what the state has done is invest in an endowment in rural Alaska to help on their energy costs. They look at the cost of energy on the rail belt, Juneau 2, divide that up, and it's about 20 cents a kilowatt. So the state, through the endowment, subsidizes, not out of the general fund, I want to make that clear, they subsidize rural Alaska from 20 cents up to about 75 cents a kilowatt. So rural Alaska can enjoy the same rates that we do, but if our rates increase, that squeezes that margin. They don't earn as much money. If we can lower the rates in the rail belt, they benefit too because there's more money. About every penny we can spread, that's $1.5 million more. So where the state has invested in infrastructure, in rural Alaska, they've invested in the endowment. The cost of that endowment or that subsidy is about $47 million a year, but the intertie ownership between Anchorage and Fairbanks that the state has through AEA, that saves about that community $40 million too. So when you look at it, it's just a matter of how we do it. So I think it's really important to note that in rural Alaska is very important, but our energy prices influence what they do. We have the energy rule, rural energy. We have bulk fuel. And, rural Alaska, there's 400 bulk fuel tanks, and there's $1 billion worth of deferred maintenance. And when I say deferred maintenance, is these tanks are close to the river, these are failing, they're 40 years old, and we can't keep up. And I say we collectively, the state and others, can't keep up with it. And an average tank is $11 million. Interestingly enough, and not to put politics into it, but the previous presidential administration was all about renewables. No money went into powerhouses or bulk fuel in rural Alaska for 4 years. There was no federal funding into it. And usually there's been a federal-state mix. Ironically, in this new administration, EPA is putting $100 million into in helping bulk fuel. We're doing $50 million worth of work. AVAC is going to do $50 million worth of work. And the goal is, through the Denali Commission, that we get $100 million a year for the next 3.5 years to put $350 million towards that issue. So that takes care of a third of our problem. But that's really key. Another one is in powerhouses. A lot of in rural Alaska is diesel. We try to augment where we can with renewables, but there's some communities, the majority of them, there will always have diesel backup. And so we need to size the community, the bulk fuel, with newer technology with the powerhouses. And a powerhouse is about 14 by 46. There's usually 3 generators in it that powers the community, and they're sized for that community. Renewable energy and energy infrastructure, thanks. Again, with a change of administration, there's a big lot of money put into the state in the previous administration, not so much with this current administration, just different priorities. And so we're still working on wind and solar and batteries or BESSes in rural Alaska to help those communities to displace diesel. Grants and loans, we have been with the help of the legislature, the last 5 years, we've increased the Renewable Energy Fund, where we try to put money into rural Alaska, primarily, that look at those early development projects. And those early ones are their feasibility, but right now there's over 100 different projects since the inception of that program that are in operation, and it displaces 13 million gallons of diesel a year. So it's been very successful for what the state's put into it, for what it's been able to leverage in federal and private funds. Another one is the energy planning. We've been very active on a task force in putting together a plan for Alaska, not to put on the shelf, but actually ones that we can pull from. One of the things, again, with the legislature, HB 307 a couple of years ago, it created what we call an RTO, a Rail Belt Transmission Organization, because right now, today, the utilities, AEA owns the power that leaves Bradley on the transmission lines, then Homer Electric owns it, then AEA owns it, then Chugach owns it, then MEA owns it, then AEA owns it, so it's this back and forth. And so we're consolidating under one tariff. So we don't have pancaking of rakes, and that we can plan accordingly of what we need to do all the way from Homer to Fairbanks and try to get away from those silos. And that was an outcome of the governor's task force that the governor, and working with the legislature, has moved forward. And we're currently in the regulatory process through the RCA. We started it in June, and we're actually going to hearing next month. So they are moving at literally a record pace. Railbelt Transmission Organization, that was the Railbelt Transmission. But when you look at this, these are active energy projects that we have across the state. And I might mention, not one of these talk about a gas line. This is just the projects that we have today. And if we put online a gas line on top of that, which I'm sure we'll end up talking about, but there's just a lot of activity. A couple of the big projects that we are doing is with Bradley Lake expansion. We're going to increase the size of Bradley by 50%. And with that, what we're going to do is there is a receding glacier called Dixon. We're doing a directional drill 5 miles through a mountain at 16-inch diameter and putting more water into Bradley Lake itself and raising the dam 16 feet. That's going to increase 180,000 million megawatts. But what that does for us is it gives us energy storage. So on the really, really cold days and we're really charged, we can kick Bradley up. And so that is going, we're filing with FERC next month, and we're meeting with FERC commissioners in 2 weeks. On this, the cost is about $350 million, of which about $100 million could be covered by tax credits. But this is one of those things where, and it will displace 1.5 billion cubic feet of natural gas, which is 7.5% of the unmet needs. It's not a complete fix, but it's in our backyard. The infrastructure's there. It just is something that we're doing. And like I said, with the cost of this, and then on top of this, we have what we call the Cook Inlet Power Link. Because the one thing that we don't have is redundancy. If we were in the lower 48, the FERC commissioner requires, we're not FERC regulated, us to have 2 transmission lines. We have 1. So when the fire happened and it was out for 4 months, if that happened in the dead of winter and it was 20 below, we'd be sitting in the dark. Because Bradley couldn't get that power up north. And matter of fact, when We had the cold snap a couple of years ago. Golden Valley was moving power south to Anchorage to help Anchorage out. And then we reverse it, and they get 17% of the power from Bradley on a normal day. So it's working together. 1 minute. The second item, but with the Cook Inlet Power Link, is we got $206 million from a federal grant, and we're going to build a undersea cable to link Nikiski over to Beluga to those existing transmission lines. It's a $400 million project. We already have $270 million in the bank, and we're looking for another 142 to complete this project. So this is where we're getting back to the basic infrastructure that we need. We can talk about big projects, but when we've ignored our transmission lines and some of these for 30, 40, 50 years, this is our problem. So these are the upgrades. So when you kind of look at AEA and to think between these two projects alone, it's almost $800 million worth of projects for a state agency that we're doing right now. We're in construction. And so with that, I will leave that because we've already talked about rural infrastructure and rural Alaska. Thanks.
All right. So who did we say was going to be next? Oh, it is John Bittner. Explain to me how you transition so beautifully between positions.
Well, wait till after the presentation. It's only been a few months. Thank you, everybody. My name is John Bittner. I know some of you are hiding your disappointment well that I am not Bob Loeffler, who was actually supposed to be here today to talk about access to resources. I have been at MDF Global for exactly 4 months now. We are a mineral exploration firm that has about 30 prospects across the state, housed or located out of Australia. And oh, thank you very much. Do I sound hoarse? Is that? Oh, look, you don't have to throw drinks at me yet. I haven't even started. You got at least let me get past the intro slide.
Challenge.
So, in addition to being a presenter today, I'm also a board member at Commonwealth North. I'm the head of the membership committee. If you like this event today, if you have a good time, please talk to me after this about joining Commonwealth North, supporting the mission. Ross has done an amazing job over the last year, putting together events like this, getting the membership activated, growing the organization. And I would very much like to continue that so we can do more events of this nature. If you don't like what you see today, remember my name is Bob Loeffler. I'm with ICER. You can reach out to Diane and all your complaints can go through her later. So natural resources have been an important part of the Alaskan economy for longer than I've been alive. From the gold rush days to the oil rush days to whatever these days we're in now. We have seen a lot of activity through our economy from not just the actual development of the oil and gas and the minerals, but also the exploration. And so because that's my particular area of expertise here today, that's what we're focusing on here. This is not development dollars, this is exploration dollars. So companies like mine that come in, that do baseline research, that hire locals, that rent out boats, buy fuel, et cetera. This is the amount of money that we pump into the economy year over year since 1982. As you can see, in 2024, and I can assure you 2025 was very similar, we're seeing an extremely large amount of investment going into mineral exploration here in Alaska, not just Alaska, it's everywhere. And this is a trend that we anticipate will continue for the next few years at least. It has been a interesting time to be in mineral exploration and in critical minerals in general. They're not only because of the global economic realities and the lack of domestic production, but also in the industries that are becoming more and more important every day. I'm talking about semiconductors driven by artificial intelligence. I'm talking about the renewable energy that Curtis talked about briefly. We're talking about aerospace industry. All of the things that are sort of growing with leaps and bounds are all underpinned by not just minerals, but particular types of minerals that America has not really developed very well over the last few decades. They've been primarily mined in other countries. China, famously, in the news a lot lately for having been at the forefront of a lot of the development in this area. But that's starting to change, and one of the reasons that's starting to change is because this administration, and again, not to piggyback on Curtis's talking points, but this administration has certain priorities, and one of their priorities is bringing back domestic production of critical minerals, what we're terming critical minerals, here to the U.S. And this is being done in a variety of ways. One is obviously new exploration, like what my company does, going out and finding prospects for antimony, for lithium, for graphite, for whatever you think of on this list. And there's about, I think, 50 minerals on there now. They added copper. They've added other things that haven't traditionally been on this list before. So finding new prospects for that. And in this sense, Alaska is brilliantly positioned. We, unlike most states, we have, I think, proven reserves of 49 out of the 50 critical minerals on this list. I don't think there's any other state that can say that. And it's not just in small quantities. We are, large percentage global total known reserves of almost any mineral you can think of that we need to continue our economy forward. But they're also looking at new ways to access critical minerals out of existing ore streams for other associated minerals. So if you're mining gold, oftentimes it's associated with other of these critical minerals, but in the past, they haven't been worth separating out and putting on the market. They're just sort of a waste. And so this administration, through a lot of different mechanisms, through executive orders, through federal grant revenues, through innovation agreements with Japan, with Australia, et cetera, are really trying to up our technology level from where we're at now, which is unfortunately not where we want it to be, to a much higher level so that we can squeeze more of these minerals out of our existing deposits as well as finding new ones. And this is causing a huge influx of investment into this sphere. Not just here in Alaska, but again, we are ground zero for this. If you want to cast the widest net possible in the largest sort of domain for mineral exploration, this is the place to be. But most of the other states that have any level of mineral exploration going on are seeing a massive influx in new, not just domestic, but international investments from Australian companies, Canadian companies, all sorts of other areas across the world. And obviously, this is having an impact on the prices. The prices of these minerals, through a lot of different factors, are going through the roof. Now, I want to mention at this point, this is a shameless plug. We are looking for a communications person at my company. And as you can see from the slides that I put together, myself, we are in desperate, dire need of one. I am sorry you have to see this or not see this as it comes to these little graphs at the bottom. What these are trying and failing to show are the increase in cost over the last 2 years of certain minerals, gold, platinum, silver, zinc. If you throw out another mineral, pretty much anything you can think of other than lead, and I'm not entirely sure why, they're all going up. They're all going, up and to the right. And it's driven by a lot of factors. One is that the global market has been constrained. There's been a lot of trade wars going on. They're going back and forth. That's caused disruption. There's a lot more investment, but there's also a lot more usage. Industries are using more of these minerals than ever before because they're producing more of the semiconductors and other things that they need. And unfortunately, defense manufacturing is going through the roof. Wars in Ukraine and other places are driving the use of these critical minerals, antimony and others. It's getting to the point where it might be easier to list the minerals that aren't critical than the ones that are, because the list is getting pretty long. But the blue there is all of the, this actually is a little outdated, it's about a year or two old. This is the US critical minerals list. These are the minerals that we have determined as a country are critical to the continuation of our core industries. This is defense, this is aerospace, this is all the things that I keep mentioning again and again, and I'll keep that going through the rest of the presentation. But basically, almost all of these are found here in Alaska. This is a laundry list of exactly what we know we have, and that's just what we know we have, right? The difficulty in this state is and always has been access. We are a massive landmass that is and we are a young state, and we have a underdeveloped infrastructure and accessibility issue. And it's limiting our ability to get to these prospects, even in terms of showing, collecting data on them, not just developing them, but even getting out there to do the diligence that we need to find out what's under the ground in a lot of these areas, and then leading that to drive the next step of development. So this is shamelessly stolen from the State of Alaska presentation. I think Dave Zamungia put this together. But this is showing the known reserves in Alaska and how they stack up in the global known reserves. And as you can see, we punch well above our weight class in terms of all of these resources. This is a massive, untapped resource that Alaska can bring to the global market in a domestic sense that will solve a vast majority of the current angst that the nation has about our critical minerals deficits, quite frankly. But again, we have to get it to market. That's the trick. And this is, over here, there's a lot of question marks. It's not that there isn't enough there to measure, it's that we just really don't know. Like, there hasn't been enough focus on these particular minerals in the past because they haven't been a focus of the government. They've been mined elsewhere. There have been other sources, right? So we haven't spent the time and resources to really define these, but now this is happening over the last 2 years, and going forward through the foreseeable future, mineral exploration companies like mine and many, many more are going to make massive investments to try and turn those question marks into actual percentages. I'm getting nervous because Larry's starting to take notes, and I know he was going to tear us all apart at the end of this, so please be gentle. Please. I've only been on the job 4 months. Don't get me fired, Larry. I'm not as versatile as you. So this is one of the only 2 slides that Bob gave me. So the rest of this is all my fault, but this one and the next one are sort of the core of what Bob Loeffler was willing to share with you. So this particular map shows the blue areas that you can see there, hopefully, show areas within 30 miles of a coast or a coastal road. And the orange lines are the interior roads. So basically what we're mapping here is accessibility. The yellow and the pink are sort of no-go zones. They're national reserves, they're parks, they're places where you can't really develop resources, right? So the blue areas are areas we can kind of get to pretty easily. Not easily, but we can get to. The yellow and the pink areas are areas that we really, we don't even bother looking at because we can't do anything if we find anything. And then the entire rest of it is areas that are very difficult to get to, and we don't really have good data sets for what's under the ground there, right? Uh-oh, am I out of time? Oh, I haven't seen the signs. I'm in the home stretch, I promise. So this is the same exact slide, but all those green dots are existing mineral exploration projects. So as you can see, I'm not saying that correlation always equals causation, but in this case, I think it kind of does, right? You can see that the preponderance of mineral exploration is done in areas that are already accessible, and that this yellow area, wildly underdeveloped, both in the north all the way through. As a recovering geologist, I can tell you, the mineral geology doesn't stop at the road here. Like there's no underlying reason for that mineralization to stop as soon as the road hits. It should continue on through. But again, until we can access that area, until we can get in there to look at it and get things out of there, it really doesn't matter. We have to invest in our infrastructure. We have to make forward-looking investments in accessibility in order to access these resources. And we're doing some of it, right? So you've heard about the Dawnland natural gas pipeline. You've heard about the Alaska liquid natural gas pipeline, the Ambler Mining District road that the president weighed in on. Even a small extension of an existing road down here is not necessarily for mineral exploration, but it will benefit it. But it doesn't always have to be 100% for mineral exploration. Any expansion of our infrastructure into these areas is going to pay dividends in one way or another. And it's important for us to hit now while the iron's hot, because this has been one of the most favorable environments for this type of work that we've ever seen. Last but not least, I really, again, if you like what you see here, please come talk to me after this about becoming a Commonwealth North member if you're not already. And if you have any questions, you can reach me there. Thank you. I've unplugged something.
And I am really happy to have Sherry Beretta here. I mean, the Alaska Native corporations are such powerful drivers of our economy, and also, I think, really have evolved in ways that no one anticipated, and I'm excited to hear where they're heading next.
Thank you, Diane.
Some more what?
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Don't do
I'm going to
it.
just do my little timer here because I don't like to go too long. Okay. Chimay, I'm Sherry Beretta, Chairman of the Board for Chugach Alaska Corporation for the past 28 years. My family is from the native village of Tititlik in Prince William Sound.
That's scary.
I'm excited to talk about positioning Alaska for growth. When you think about the fact that many of us, well, some of us grew up here, and we care about our community, our kids growing up here, and to have strong, healthy thriving communities is really important. So good jobs, good streets that we care about. And so when we talk about positioning Alaska for growth, it's more than just the economic part of it, it's the social part of it. And it's really what ANCSA was about. And so I'm going to spend a little time talking about the current landscape that Chugach is in and the Alaska Native corporations. But I'm going to talk about some of the challenges and some exciting opportunities. So with that, I'll just say that we're committed to Alaska, and we're building our companies here, and we have our headquarters here, and Chugach employs up to 5,000 people at any given time. And it's an incredible honor to be able to import profits into Alaska and know that we're going to be here for perpetuity, and that the decisions that we make every day affect future generations to come. And so when I was putting this together, I've been rolling out this presentation all week on the village and the city, and I'll get to that. Oop, I only said it for 2 minutes, so 2 minutes are gone. I'll talk about our current landscape, but I'm going to get to the village and the city, but it's because it's right on my heart, because I've been talking about it so much. I'm going to put it at the front. I want to talk a little bit about the ANCs, Alaska Native Corporations, and most of you know that over 50 years ago, the Settlement Act happened because of the discovery of oil on the North Slope and the land claims that needed to be settled in order to build TAPS, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And so it has been fits and starts because most of our people lived off the land, but we have figured it out. And through programs like the SBA 8A program, they have allowed us to develop our companies to be able to participate in the global marketplace. And so we're all around the world in many cases, providing services to the Department of Defense and bringing those learnings back to our company and reinvesting them. In the last year, Chugach has invested in 4 different companies, commercial companies. We have a holding company structure that allows us to be able to do government contracting and commercial investments, and we're excited about that. But we also have another structure that's called our Community Values Center, where we focus on the social well-being of our people and investment in our communities, education, and our culture. So these are just some statistics that I have brought about what we're doing. I'm going to just go right to our development challenges, because we're dealing with those on an ongoing basis. And so this whole DEI executive order has been difficult for us because we don't fall into that category. We have a statutory relationship with the federal government that is longstanding, and it's built on agreements that were made of the indigenous people of this land. And so educating people has been very important. And so the 8A program has been the missing link of the Settlement Act, an economic driver that allows us to be able to participate and build our company. So we must protect it, and we must educate so that we can continue to benefit from that and then grow and create commercial companies and move to the next phase of our development. The other challenge that's under this is our land exchange. I've been working this for over 36 years, since the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened in the heart of our region, 3 miles from the village that my family is from, Tititlik. And we're almost there. We're going to get a meaningful land settlement that allows us to be able to get surface estate for subsurface that was sold from the village corporations as a habitat acquisition program. And so that's very important to me, and I'm excited to be at a place where that might actually come to fruition. Okay, I'm going to jump to our, some of the exciting things that Chugach, that I've personally been able to do, is bring the carbon market to Alaska through the California California Air Resource Board. Chugach lobbied the California Air Resource Board to include the inventory from Alaska in their market. And we were successful at that. This young man actually went with me to meet with the chairman, and we, Matt Ellis and I, and we were, Alaska's been included, and we've been in that market, and it's exciting to participate in those types of things. We also did a coal sale where we retired the rights to the coal and generated a significant net operating loss that we were able to fund our education endowment $30 million, and it's generating $1 million a year in scholarships as well as funding our cultural camp out at Hinchinbrook Island. So we have these challenges that we turn into opportunities. I do want to say that the oil spill was devastating, but we do recognize that it's the bloodline of Alaska, and the opportunity for the liquid natural gas pipeline is a reality that we all should get behind to support and try to create an economy that benefits all of Alaskans. But the big thing that I've been talking about a lot is this village in a city. So I grew up here in Anchorage, between Anchorage and Tutitlik, and I knew that there wasn't a lot of land in Midtown. So we secured 4 acres over on 36th and Old Seward, and we're building a village in the city. This happens to be my daughter, Anastasia. But, you know, I'm at a place now where I'm starting to think about retirement, so I'm really getting some things done, and this is one of them. And so the compound will have a museum, a Chugach museum that we've gotten EVO's trustee council funds for, and we will also be building a resource center, a gym, gathering place. It'll have a subsistence kitchen and a child care center. There'll be some housing on there as well. And so met with the mayor yesterday. She's excited about it, and so that's a big deal. More to come. If you want to hear more, I've got a whole dog and pony show that I'll bring to your office. And, so we're looking for support. And so in conclusion, I had all these papers I was supposed to read, but I thought I'd just tell you about it. In closing, there was a time when Chugach had only a single oar in the water, government contracting. Today, through growth and learning to run businesses and achieve diversification and bold investments, we have many oars pulling Chugach Wadarkas, our kayaks, towards profitability and prosperity. I know this is true not only for Chugach, but for all Alaska and for every Alaska Native corporation, and the businesses beyond our Native community. Many oars, many rowers, all pulling together toward the same goal of prosperity for the state we call home. Chugach stands ready to do our part. Let us move forward together, united in our vision and unwavering commitment to a brighter future for all Alaskans. Kayana, thank you.
All right. So excited to talk now a little bit about the thing that we at ICER love most, which is data, right? And being able to think about how you make the decisions with, and how you make informed decisions. So with that, Alexei.
Keep it up here for Larry too, I guess. My name is Alexei Painter. I'm the director of the Legislative Finance Division, and I guess I'm one of the people who have not changed jobs. I've been there for 12 years and the director for 5 years, so a little bit of stability. And the Legislative Finance Division is a nonpartisan agency that helps the legislature with budgeting and fiscal advice. And so I'm going to talk a bit first about, before we talk about the future, a little bit about the recent past. So this graph shows, in the background, the area shows our various revenue sources, and the bars show our budget. And this goes back to FY14 because in 2014, oil prices crashed significantly and haven't really ever recovered, although briefly they did after the Ukraine war began. And the big change that happened is in FY19, we started drawing from the permanent fund, and that's that purple bar, that draw from the permanent fund. That's now our largest source of revenue. And so in this kind of fiscal era we're in right now, we have a structural budget deficit, meaning if we paid a statutory dividend, if we paid for all the things that our statute said we should be paying for each year, we would have a deficit. The governor's budget has a $1.5 billion deficit, same as what he came in at last year. And his budget is a pretty skinny budget other than the PFD. It's generally does not fund, the capital budget is literally all federal match. There's no investments in new projects or deferred maintenance or anything like that. We've been in sort of what I call the muddle through fiscal plan since the POMV draw was adopted. Every year, basically, we start with, well, if we follow the statutory PFD, we'd have a large deficit. We see what our revenue is. We see how much money we have then for the capital budget and the PFD, and we make it work. Generally, we've been able to pass budgets that don't have deficits, but sometimes oil prices crash, so we end up, like this year, we have to go back and add and figure out the current year after the fact. But generally, we've been running roughly balanced budgets for the last 6 or 7 years. But that's based on kind of systematically doing things that work for a little while but aren't necessarily long-term solutions. One of the big ones is underinvesting in deferred maintenance of state facilities, of school facilities, of things like bulk fuel. If we wanted to keep the current footprint of state government indefinitely, we probably would need to increase our budget by several $100 million. So we're kind of running on this temporary track right now. And if we're looking towards the future and how we actually grow the state, that could be a problem. If we want to make investments to improve our infrastructure, as that was discussed, we're not even keeping up with our existing infrastructure in our current kind of de facto fiscal plan that we have. So I want to talk a bit about our long-term revenue outlook. So we have, and long-term, I'm talking 10 years. It's not really long-term, it's medium-term, but by state government standards, 10 years is a long time. There's some good news, which is that oil production is projected to rise. So in the Department of Revenue's forecast, they're projecting that by FY35, we'll see a 27% increase in production from the North Slope. That's really good news. That's a lot more production. The downside is because of the way that production is taxed and because of the way costs are going, the production tax itself is actually projected to decline over that period. Total oil revenue is supposed to increase, but a lot of that is because of the royalty increase, but actual production taxes are going to go down. And so this highlights what a lot of people have called the Alaska disconnect. Alaska's revenue and our economy are not very closely tied together. It used to be that our revenue was very closely tied to the health of the oil industry. That's increasingly not the case because our largest source of revenue is the permanent fund, which is essentially the health of the global financial markets. And within the actual taxing the oil industry, because of numerous provisions that I guess I wanted to go into detail when I wrote this slide, but I know I don't have time to name them all. But because of the way the production tax works, we're not necessarily seeing a revenue increase from this new production and these new fields. A lot of that is because those old fields, a lot of the capital costs were long since paid off. Now, when you go into new fields, there's a lot of new investments that need to be made. So the deductions are a lot higher. Since we have a profits tax, there's just fewer profits to tax. But it's also that new fields are taxed less than old fields. And then the rest of the economy, the oil industry is actually a relatively small part of our economy because it's a value add industry, a resource industry. It has an outsized impact. It has large multipliers for our economy. But the rest of our economy is really not a major part of our revenue picture. Non-petroleum revenue is about 10% of our general fund revenue this year. It's not a particularly large source. And so that means if we have new economic activity other than oil and gas, we don't really see more revenue. And so where that, turns up as a disconnect is that new economic activity creates costs for the state. It does not create revenue. And so a hypothetical here is, what if we had somehow we managed to lure 100,000 remote workers to Alaska. Great, Alaska's beautiful, people want the outdoors, they want to come be remote workers in Alaska, but we essentially wouldn't tax them on the state level. Local property taxes might go up because they would have additional value from where those people live. But we would see that there's more kids in our schools. That would be a cost. Some of that's borne by the local governments through the required local contribution. The majority of that would come from the state. If those people happen to move to Anchorage or Juneau or one of the other places that are unified and do their own policing, then great, those local property taxes pay for it. If they move to a place that relies on state troopers for policing, like the Mat-Su, Kenai, Fairbanks, those areas rely on state troopers for their regular policing outside of the organized cities. And so we would see a cost to the state. There's a lot of other things you could think about. If we need to actually create the housing, a lot of states that have housing crises invest state money to try to create incentives for new housing development. We don't really do that, in part because we don't have broad-based taxes that those are levied against, but also that's not been something that we have the money for necessarily. So in order to make those investments, there would be a cost, but again, there's not really any revenue. And Mike Navarro, who used to be the commissioner of the Department of Commerce, gave a presentation one time where he was saying, well, if you're the state, you would actually say you don't want new development because it just hurts your bottom line. Obviously, the state of Alaska as an entity doesn't exist like that. I'm the one telling the legislature, whether you have enough money or not. And I wouldn't say, don't grow the economy because it's bad for our finances. But that's the truth, right? That's how we've set up the state. And that's a challenge that I would encourage everybody to think about as if you're trying to actually grow the state's economy, how do we make sure the state government can react to that and have the resources to be able to keep investing in the things that need to be invested in? Because right now there's a very large disconnect and we're struggling to essentially fund the things needed to keep our current footprint, let alone new investments. I see the 1 minute mark, but I think I'm done there. So happy to turn it over to Larry to do the cleanup.
No slides, don't worry. I can't do PowerPoint. So a couple things before I do a few points I want to make, but I was asked to be positive today because this is positive, right? I was thinking about that. I haven't been positive since I was tested for strep 30 years ago. But I'm going to try. I really am. The other thing, John, I noticed calcium is not a critical mineral. I've got osteoporosis. It's critical. That's on the Larry list. Okay, on the Larry list. A little story about the disconnect that Alexei talked about. When I was with the Department of Revenue as deputy commissioner, we had a aluminum smelter company come into revenue. And they said, well, we think maybe we'd like to build an aluminum smelter in Valdez. No commitment, no money on the table, but they were thinking about it. And their pitch was, if the state built the gas line to bring gas down from the North Slope to Valdez and gave them the state's royalty gas for free, they would think about building a smelter. So Commissioner Condon and I thought about it and sent them a letter, said, let me get this straight. Oh, and they're an LLC, so they don't pay corporate tax. There'd be no revenue from corporate tax, no revenue from the royalty. You would pay the operations and maintenance on the gas line, but not the capital investment for it. And then you'd have hundreds of workers who would need schools and ambulances and everything else in Valdez. We're going to lose money. So, no thanks. We've been battling that for how many decades around here? So, to be positive, everyone talks about opportunities and growth, and they're there, but they take investment. And that's been the problem here. I don't know how the rest of you feel. Food that I didn't pay for tastes better than the food I paid for. It's the same with investment. If we got to take it out of our pocket, it's limited. We don't have that much. or we can drain the permanent fund, but we need to attract not just outside investment, certainly whether it's critical minerals or anything else, we also need to attract outside people. And we're failing at both of those, I think. We need to have, you look at the numbers from the Department of Labor, the net out-migration has exceeded the in-migration. But because of births, we're sort of holding okay on population. We're not getting new blood. Nothing against those of us here today, but we're not the leaders of tomorrow. We need new leaders. We need a state that people are going to want to move to, that provides the services, that has growth opportunities. So I think if I were to be an optimist, I'd say, well, if we can get the right political leadership and change some things in Alaska, attract some new money, cough up some on our own, we could make the state a real growth potential. But we need that outside money, and we need new residents. Not just, I like speaking, but, God, I'm 74. Go listen to someone else. So, having said that, I will talk about, one thing I was asked about is what's going on with Venezuela, with all the new oil. Is that going to affect Alaska? Because, of course, as we know, oil prices dictate our life, whether there's money for, whether there's money for what we need. I'm here to tell you, I don't think Venezuela is going to do squat to Alaska North Slope oil prices. The market is not concerned. I'm talking about market pricing. You look how it's moved in the last couple of weeks. The market is not concerned that there may be another couple 100,000 barrels a day of gunk from Venezuela coming to the market. What freaked the market out this past week is what's happening in Iran. So Venezuela, you know what? They several 100,000 barrels a day export. Iran, 2 million barrels a day. Plus, if there's problems in the Mideast, it's not just the Iranian oil that's at risk. So that's what really worries the market and drives up prices. Well, today, Trump declared peace in Iran, no more fighting, and the oil prices went down. I didn't know the markets were that damn gullible, but they obviously are. So as I think about it, Venezuela oil is important to the U.S. Gulf Coast. Those refineries were built to process that thick stuff and turn it into gasoline. Venezuela oil never comes to the West Coast. We're a separate market here. The West Coast gets its oil from Alaska, California, Canada, North Dakota, some imports, but not that thick, heavy stuff from Venezuela. So I don't think what's going on with Venezuela is going to affect Alaska North Slope prices, the budget, the price at the pump here. It is going to affect certainly the price of the pump in lower 48, but what happens, the rest of the geopolitical world, Iran in particular, could affect us if there's problems there, drives up the price, lowers our deficit. The other thing I was going to mention is someone said, well, what about winter tourism as potential? And certainly that is, you've got I hate the word infrastructure, but you do have infrastructure set up for the summer, and then it's locked up for the winter. So there is, I think, a lot of potential there, and you do see a lot of marketing for it. My closing comment on that is, when people are thinking about winter tourism, I don't think they had in mind that the City Bureau of Juneau's insurance company would fly 200 people from Anchorage into Juneau last week to clear the snow off the roofs. So they did have an influx of winter tourism in Juneau. They had 2 flights, one with 200 people to clean the roofs and another with shovels because they had run out of shovels in town. So, if I had just invested in shovels instead of newspapers, I wouldn't be driving a 20-year-old car. And with that, you're in charge.
Thank you. So, as you can see, we have a process for getting some questions in, and all right, and I'm also supposed to let Sherry know that if you need to sneak out, we are, maybe we start with a question for you before we let you sneak out. And I think, is this the mic for the panel? Okay, great. So good. Well, let's see. While we're waiting for people to send their questions in, I will ask. Actually, could you talk a little bit more about that initiative and who you're aiming to serve in the Town and Village initiative, and what it's going to mean for the rest of us who are living in Anchorage and watching this emerge in our neighborhood?
Sure, I'd love to. It's going to serve Alaska Natives, all Alaska Natives, and the idea is that we'll have our museum there and a resource center, workforce development. So often you have people coming in from rural communities and they don't have the skills to be successful in Anchorage. And so it's going to be aimed at giving them those opportunities and linking them to jobs and resources. Chugach Alaska Corporation has run the Palmer Job Corps Center for the past 30 years, and they have a program where they have 100% placement of those students into jobs. And that's kind of the model that we're looking at, where you look at the data of homelessness, and there's a third of the population is one paycheck away from homelessness. So if we can be proactive about investing in those individuals' ability to be successful employees and working with businesses here in Anchorage, that's a pathway towards their success in breaking that cycle, because it becomes so much more expensive when you deal with chronic inebriates on the street versus people that just can't find affordable housing and jobs because they don't have the soft skills. So that's part of it. And then you go to villages, and the gym is where everybody gathers for weddings, funerals, potlucks, whatever functions, because it's the biggest building. So having a gym that we could have gatherings in and invite the public and have possibly a Saturday market or tour buses or school buses that come. But then to have a housing element, 2 housing developments of their 2 and 3 bedroom, 32 units in each one. They could have a mix of elders and then have the child care facility. So you would have a community that gets the interaction of elders, and you could have an elders council that mentors some of the residents that may be housed to get training towards a university. And one last thing I want to say is, what about if we had a corridor from the airport to the UMed that was focused on Alaska Native? CITC or Cook Inlet Housing Authority is doing it over on Spenard with their benches and stuff. But to just kind of slow down the traffic there, make it more pedestrian friendly, and that's that. Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing this evolve. So we have a question that I didn't come up with for Curtis, but it certainly fits. I'm really happy to see this question. He knows my research a little bit. So there are some federal funds out there for nuclear power development. What are your thoughts about, I'm going to change the wording slightly, micronuclear or MNRs, as small micro reactors?
Great question. Answer is yes. It's something that AEA has been looking at. We've partnered with the university, and I've actually been down to the Idaho National Lab and looking at small micronuclear sites, especially in hub communities in rural Alaska. They'll be great because they're Connex size. You put them into a community, you know what that price is going to be for 20 years. You go in there, you change out the pellets, and you bring them back. And when I talk about the size of pellets or the energy, about the size of that water glass is about the size that you can do those communities. And then you take it one step further, and we talk about development of our natural resources. And I'm going to just say Graphite 1 north of Nome. Go and put one of those in, or Donlin. Put a couple in Donlin, use it to run the power, and when the project's done, you pull it out. So it's a great way to do it. The one thing I think we all can agree on is we don't want serial number 1 or 2 or 3. We'd like to at least maybe get to number 10 and 11. But yeah, that is something that we're looking at with the university and working with different labs to see what the capacity is in Alaska. But it's a great, and really it's probably our future, but it's probably 20 years down the road for the technology.
Moment of clarification. So this is a question for Alexi, which is when you look at opportunities for revenues in the state, what are we leaving on the table if we don't have an income tax that includes out-of-state workers?
So an income tax and a sales tax have kind of similar amounts that you export to non-Alaskans. An income tax through non-resident workers, and then a sales tax through visitors to the state. And then the PFD also gets exported to the federal government through the share that is taxed. All of those are actually pretty comparable percentages, but the distributional impact and potentially the economic impact is pretty different. But all of them, when Department of Revenue has done numbers show that, you get about 15% more from non-Alaskans than what Alaskans would pay. And then when you cut the dividend, or increase the dividend, about 15% of that goes to the federal government. So it all kind of works out pretty close. But there is a different distributional impact for sure in terms of who is paying that tax and what the economic activity would be or effect of that is for the income or sales. But it's surprising that all three are very close.
And shameless pitch, coming out at the end of the month, our analyses done by ICER's economic team. I think the 29th, it'll show up on our revamped website, and we'll be talking about it in person in Juneau then, and then more opportunities coming up to chat with us, hopefully in partnership with Commonwealth North. One just quick follow-up, which you may or may not know, is how many states have an S-corp tax?
So we're kind of unique in that we have a corporate income tax, but not a personal income tax. Most states that don't have a personal income tax, and there's not very many of them, don't have a corporate income tax as well. So we're pretty much, I think there's 3 states that fall into that category of having a corporate income tax, but not a personal income tax. And those states have kind of fees they charge on S-corps, but not necessarily a tax structure. But it's really the uniqueness of our structure is mostly that we have a corporate but not personal income tax. And when we repealed the personal income tax, there was not a provision that extended that corporate income tax to S corporations. So it's really just the unusual tax structure we have that drives that.
Right. So this is a question I'm going to start with John, though others might be thinking about this as well. So when we're looking at future opportunities, whether it's a gas line or new mining opportunities or other new industries, how does the timeline of those economic benefits align or not with the needs of our state, which are increasingly immediate and increasingly acute? And what can we do now?
Yeah, so it again, it depends on scale, right? So something like a gas pipeline, that is a very long-term project. That's absolutely going to be well beyond the immediate future or the immediate present where we're dealing with. But there are smaller scale projects that can and absolutely should be launched now. Accessibility projects, data collection projects, workforce development projects, changes that don't require massive changes to massive influxes of capital. I think we can't pick one or the other. It's going to be a full court spread, right? You have to do what you can now with focus, with a plan, and then also at the same time start laying the groundwork for the next 10, 20, even 30 years out. Because otherwise we end up in a place where we kind of are today, where we didn't do a lot of that groundwork, and so we're not reaping the benefits of 30 years ago today. And building on that, we're having to start a little slower than we normally would. Not necessarily our fault. There was a lot of economic turmoil, a lot of budgetary issues. But again, at some point, we have to invest in ourselves in order to preserve what we have and grow.
So Curtis, I want to ask you, if you were to, have a legislature that said, we got a windfall and we want to give you some money. So if we had a state that suddenly got a windfall, right? What is one energy project that you'd like to see move forward that could create both energy, more energy security and more development opportunities within Alaska?
I have been looking for a leprechaun in Juneau for years.
There's a few around the room.
Yeah, there's a few. Thank you, Senator Stedman. I think the biggest thing, when you look at the rail belt and 75% of the population, the two biggest areas is one I mentioned with Bradley and with what we call the Cook Inlet Power Link or SIP Link. Those two projects, we have an easy way to add 5% or 50%, increase it by 50% or 5 more percent capacity on the rail belt. But the SIP link in that one is really key because we don't have the redundancy on the power lines. We want to see Anchorage grow. We want to see the military grow. Guess what? The military wants to see 2 power lines supplying its military base, not one that's 50 years old. And so, as a shameless plug, as far as the Cook Inlet Power Link, we've already secured $270 million are in the bank, ready for that project, and we need 142 to close that gap. We're looking at it from many different ways, but that would be a real key gap to help close because that's needed. And when we look at those 2 projects, we want Bradley is scheduled to be flowing water in 2030. SIPLink is supposed to be closed and operating by 2032. So these, when we talk about long-term projects, these are next 6 to 7 years, we'll have those projects online. We are chasing financing many different ways, but really, if we could really close the gap, I would say the SIPLink one is the quickest one. The reason I don't say Bradley is because Bradley is one that the ratepayers and through a power sales agreement and the utilities have already committed to buy all the water that will produce. And so that one's easier to finance because we already have it completely sold. The SIPLink one is getting that redundancy that we need. And I'm just going to, since I have the mic, I want to do a shameless plug. On the nuclear question, there is a documentary that Oliver Stone did called Nuclear Now. It's about 90 minutes. It's, I don't know how long ago, 10 years, 12 years ago. It's a fascinating documentary of nuclear from when it started under Eisenhower to where we ended up today. And it looks at it from a world perspective and opportunities missed and opportunities we can gain. So Nuclear Now by Oliver Stone is a great thing to look at. It doesn't do the small micronuclear, but it really gives a good foundational.
Excellent, thank you. So I think this might be an Alexi question, but if other people also have thoughts, because it asks about mining. Why does weed bring in more revenue than mining? and how do we look at balancing that?
Different tax structures, I suppose. Well, and the marijuana tax is an interesting one where, the tax structure is a little bit broken. There's been some legislation to try to look at that, that essentially the tax structure is driving people back to the illegal market. So it brings in money for now, but decreasing every year because more and more people are leaving the legal market. We don't see like mining companies, I mean, maybe we do. Maybe there is an illegal mining industry. I'm just not aware of it. But right.
I got some gold
essentially,
in the parking lot.
our mining license tax structure is pre-statehood. If you look at the brackets, they're all like comically small. They're like the top bracket starts at like $100,000 or something because the structure was made in the 50s and the tax has not meaningfully changed since the 50s. In terms of just the way the deductions work and all of those things, they're pretty archaic. It's not a modern tax. It really isn't. We do get a significant amount of corporate income tax from mining companies as well. But it's really variable on minerals prices. So, my prior job before I came to legislative finance was to do the non-petroleum forecasting for the Department of Revenue. And one of the biggest factors in our non-petroleum corporate income tax fluctuations are the price of gold and zinc because of our, the gold mines there. I'd say essentially, yeah, the structure is very outdated. That's the biggest reason why there's not a lot of money. The other thing I would say is that, these projects are very long-term projects, and a lot of times they don't make money for a very, very long time. When I was working for Department of Revenue in 2014, a lot of the mines we were looking at as future development and debating whether to put them in the forecast are ones we still talk about. Graphite 1, Bocan Mountain and Ketchikan, Donlin, right? We were talking about, should we have Donlin in the 10-year forecast in 2014? Well, good thing we didn't. A lot of times these mines will lose money for a very long time. So you have to be very careful with your tax structure that, you make that work. But on the oil side, we've allowed them to carry forward losses to where once they do come into production, they don't actually pay taxes for quite a few years. So it's really hard to design a tax that works well when you have all those factors. And I don't know if Larry, you're another Harvard Revenue alum, if you want to comment on that too.
You're right. Even when I was there, it was always looking at, well, is this mine going to be in this forecast, or is it 10 years out, or is it 15 years out? We used to do the same thing with oil fields. It's all, the price is what matters.
All right. Oh, did you want to?
So again, and when we talk about this, I think what we're talking about is state revenue driven by, and that's not the entire picture, right? So if you look at where these mineral exploration and these mines operate, they tend to be in remote communities, remote areas. They drop an enormous amount of money into local economies, into regional economies, into workforce in these areas. They build housing, they build projects, they build all sorts of stuff that isn't reflected necessarily in a state tax structure. Also, any of these mineral prospects that are on Alaska Native land, that are on regional land, like Red Dog, a portion of those revenues is distributed amongst all of the different federally recognized tribes. And you probably know way more about this than I do. But in terms of Red Dog, there is a massive amount of money every year that goes out to all of these communities through that mine. So saying that we don't, like, that's a fun, I haven't heard a phrase like that, marijuana makes more money for the state than mining. Okay, that is fun to say, but as an actual economic driver, it's really not an accurate depiction. Like, if you look at the amount of investment that mineral exploration and mining has driven in Alaska, in particularly very difficult to develop areas, it's just not even close to comparable.
Great. All right. Well, one last question. Oh, did you want to?
Well, I just want to clarify that the 7I was one line in the Settlement Act. It goes to the 12 regions, and then they distribute it to the village corporations. It's 70% of those proceeds, and it's what saved some of the ANCs. So thank you, Red Dog Mine and Arctic Slope. They've been carrying heavy load. Diane, I'm just going to say, just because you're at the university, investment in our education is critical to our future. And having served on the University Board of Regents during a time when there were severe cuts and to our K through 12, we have to turn that around to let the education, our next generation, know how important we care about their education, invest in technology and AI and how we integrate that and count on them. We don't need to import people, we need to educate the people that are here and ensure that they are prepared for the opportunities that exist, and create think tanks, have a vision for the future, create leaders that guide the state forward, and that's my thought.
Thank you. And I'll just pitch that deferred maintenance goes with that, because as Mike and I can talk about, there are lights that are falling out of the ceiling when small earthquakes hit, because our deferred maintenance is so behind. And so it's also about having schools that are safe for children to be in, that don't have toxic chemicals or sewage running through them, and a university where we're not worried that the next time an earthquake hits, we're going to get hit over the head by a light falling from the ceiling. So we're going to try to end on a happier note. Sorry, Larry. And hand him the microphone, because what we'd like everybody to do is actually share with us one thing that makes you optimistic about the future of Alaska.
There's an election in November.
Well, You know, when I talk to my colleagues in other states, they say, why are you guys complaining in Alaska? You're the only state that doesn't have a tax and you pay your citizens and you're complaining that you're broke, right? In Alaska, we have a political question about how to deploy our resources. We do not have a shortage of financial resources in the state. It's just a kind of essentially a political question. And a lot of states would be envious of only having that problem.
Thank you. So optimistic about the future is that spring is just around the corner, and this next generation coming up survived COVID, and they're just starting to emerge like butterflies into our workforce, and I'm excited about them because I have a couple of them that are emerging into the workforce, and so I think that there's a lot of opportunities, and I'm glad that I was able to be here to listen into some of this information, and thank you all.
Thank you. What am I optimistic about? I think that Alaska has all of the pieces it needs to be successful. I really do. I think that we have the resources, we have the people, we have the financial mechanisms that other states are envious of, and we have the expertise. What we need is just to focus and come up with a long-term strategy to put all of those pieces together in a meaningful way that will pay dividends not only in the next 3 to 5 years, but in the next 15 to 30 years. And we've done it before. I truly believe we can do it again. And to piggyback on what you were just saying, I've got two kids that are, my daughter's about to go off to college. My son is in high school. And they give me a lot of hope too, because thank God they took after their mother. So I think we've got a good next generation coming up out of here. It'll be great.
Whoa.
I'll be out on my sling in 4 weeks.
High five.
Yeah, yeah, not quite yet. No, the one thing I will say, and I'll take a step back, and I'll speak on behalf of AEA. There's a really dedicated team of people at AEA. We have 50 employees. We're running $800 million worth of projects, and we have deadlines that we're meeting. And we're getting the support from the administration, both in Juneau and Washington, D.C., and we're getting the support from the legislature that we need. And having all that, as you say, rowing in the right direction is really key to be successful. We've just got to look at that end game and what our goal is. And, again, looking at the Washington, D.C. aspect of it, it's nice when we can go into a meeting and they go in and say, whether it be Department of Energy, whether it be the Department of Ag, they have loan funds, where they will sit there and say, we're aware of the executive order on Alaska. What can we do to help you? And that's really key that we haven't had, and we have a short window to take advantage of it. So with the legislature and the governor, I'm really optimistic that we're moving forward on some of these key projects that are really the backdoor stuff. It's not the sexy stuff. A transmission line isn't sexy. But again, if you're sitting in the dark, it's one of your biggest priorities. So with that, I just want to thank and like I said, especially with legislators here, not to sound out, but I want to thank you because we wouldn't have HB 307. We wouldn't have a lot of the reforms that we needed to move forward to where we are today. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Again, our panel was terrific, very thoughtful answers, and I look forward to continuing this conversation at upcoming events.
Speaking of upcoming events, our next one is the Governor Dunleavy's final year priorities and intimate conversation members reception, and then the State of the State debate with Kathy Giesel and Senator Michael Cronk and a special mystery guest. And just one final note, I do want to say thank you very much to our panelists. Also, thank you all for being here. Thank you for our legislators who are out in Juneau fighting on our behalf, and thank you for our previous visionary leaders, Tony Knowles, and other politicians who have fought the good fight. I know Alaskans love the panacea, the silver bullet, the one giant thing that will save us, but really it is baby steps that will take us that big leap forward. And we just need to start focusing on those baby steps that move us incrementally forward so we can rebuild our state back to the place that we remember and the education that we had when we were here, when we were young, because that's what the generation did for us, before us, the Tony Knowles generation did. They helped build the Alaska, not for just for my generation, but generations ahead. And we need to start thinking, not the next generation, but the next generations ahead. And we can get back to that. So I want to say thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And Commonwealth North, if you'd like to join, just come to our website. Thank you. Tony.